Former developers on Starbound say Chucklefish exploited them for free work. This is from a very long report over on Polygon. I'm going to drop this in the chat. This is definitely recommended reading, guys. I will link to this in the description of the video if you're watching over on YouTube as well, because we're not going to go through this whole thing. As you can see, this story is hella long. But essentially, some former developers that worked on Chucklefish's 2014 game Starbound have come out and said that they worked on the game for free. And some of them even claim that they worked for hundreds of hours on the game as a development resource and multiple other facets of the game, and received zero compensation for it. So let's see. Let's just read some of these some of these quotes here. It says let me pull this over here. Former worker Fettlestar, aka Christine, tweeted, quote, "I put in at least 100 hours of work and didn't see any sort of compensation. I was really naive and too afraid to ask to be paid because anyone who did would be screamed at. I also witnessed a lot of inappropriate behavior," end quote. There's also stories through here of teenagers working for, a couple of years and not seeing any compensation from the work that they did. Let's see. I want to make sure I get the names right. Damon Reese, he was credited as a contributor on the game, and he said, quote, "I was a teenager with no game development experience, and I was taken advantage of by Finn Bryce. He very consciously manipulated and exploited not only myself, but almost everyone on and around the team," end quote. Reese recalled being asked by Bryce if working for free would be a problem. Quote, "This felt normal and fine and exciting because I didn't value myself for my work. I thought that the experience and exposure I gained from working on the game would be enough compensation. That is obviously not true, but it is a very easy lie for an eager teenager to swallow. Additionally, there were already a number of other contributors, many of them teenagers like me, who weren't getting paid." They also go on to tell stories about how Finn Bryce knew that he had this teenage labor, this free labor kind of had an expiration date on it, where he knew, okay, I'm going to be able to work them for X amount of time, and then they're going to start to wise up to the fact that they're wasting all this time and not getting any money. But by the time they were burnt out and ready to move on, they had already lined up other individuals to take their place who were going to be willing to work for free. Reese goes on to say, quote, "When the game's beta released in December 2013, it sold over 1 million copies in its first month, and yet Chucklefish management still considered it wholly acceptable to continue using unpaid workers to complete their game," end quote. Reese is now the lead writer for Route 59 Games and says, quote, "I have regrets over the whole thing, obviously. I regret not quitting sooner and not standing up for myself, but I refuse to blame myself for being exploited as a teenager," end quote. Chucklefish did respond to these allegations. They said, quote, "We're aware and saddened by the current allegations against Chucklefish regarding Starbound's early development. During this time, both the core crew and community contributors were collaborating via a chat room and dedicated their time for free. Community contributors were under no obligation to create content, work to deadlines, or put in any particular number of hours. Everyone was credited or remunerated as per their agreement. It's been almost a decade since Starbound's development first began, and from then, Chucklefish has grown considerably into an indie studio that has a strong emphasis on good working practices, providing a welcoming environment for all employees and freelancers. Our doors remain open to any related parties who wish to discuss their concerns with us directly," end quote. So yeah, this is one of those stories that's like, we used this last week on PvA radio when we were talking about gaming's Me Too moment. It's one of these stories that's like, it doesn't come as a shock to you that stuff like this happens, but it is shocking when you read the accounts of it. Like giving hundreds of hours of development work to a studio for completely free, especially when that studio has gone on to sell 1 million, like millions of dollars worth of your hard work is just insane to me. I'm trying to find. I meant to pull out. There was a very short quote in here about one of the things they were promised in here, but it was essentially like, I think I can find it by doing this. Yeah, here's a part of it. One former worker who asked that their identity be protected said that they agreed to volunteer work, quote, as a way to get my foot in the door, end quote, of a game development career. And this is the rub. And this is the problem with the kind of like, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. Kind of nature of the games industry. There's this whole idea of you're not going to be able to get in on the ground floor of anything that's going to be well paid. You're going to have to make a ton of sacrifices just to be able to get your foot in the door, because you are one of thousands of individuals who wants to make a career out of making games. And the problem is that the people in power at these studios know that. We've talked about this a lot when we talk about like labor issues at big publishers who like are answerable to shareholders. They know that, like, hey, we can axe 250 employees because we know when we need, 150 developers 6 months from now, there's going to be a line of people outside the door who want a chance in this industry. And so the idea is like, okay, in order for us to be able to get ahead, what we have to do is shill ourselves out for free. Hopefully we meet the right people, shake the right hands, sit in on the right meetings, get the right name on our resume. Hopefully we're able to make the right connections here that we can grow this into a career and people can start to value our work. And I just take a lot of issue with that. And we should. And I talk to people who, have aspirations in the games industry, who have aspirations in, I work in marketing. I know people who have aspirations to work in like design for in marketing or in development for marketing or doing what I do. One of the industries I want to break into is the eSports industry. And I see people who are working their asses off to break into the eSports industry. And there's this mindset of like, oh man, well, I don't even expect to get paid for the first year, 2 years of doing esports work. I go on a site called Hitmarker Jobs every single day because, I've got my ear to the ground on esports jobs. It's my dream to work for an esports organization. But yeah, I look at these, I look at Hitmarker every day, and they have a whole section for volunteer work. So right now, let me pull this up. Right now, Hitmarker has, close to 1,000 jobs being listed. A tenth of the jobs that they have listed right now are volunteer. I wanted to find one. Let me, while I'm scrolling through here, let me see if I can't find it. They may have taken it down. But I was scrolling through here the other day, and I was just curious. Like, look, I'm going to be honest. I have zero interest in working for free. Zero interest in working for free. I've done it before. When I was trying to work to get into like games writing, I wrote for multiple organizations for no pay or very, very little pay. And I just have no interest in doing that anymore. And I'll get back to that in a second. So I have no interest when I'm on Hitmarker Jobs in applying for these volunteer jobs. But I saw one the other day. I think this is it. Okay. I'm just going to throw these names out here too. Noct Gaming is a startup focusing on being a competitor in esports and building up creative talent. But keep in mind, this is a position for a CFO, a chief financial officer. The post continues, we are looking to compete in COD, Fortnite, Apex Legends, and other titles, as well as provide an avenue for streamers, content creators, and fitness enthusiasts. We want to break the stigma that gamers are lazy, quote, an arrow must be pulled back to fly forward, end quote. We'll come back to this little statement here. Oh no, I'm sorry. It's at the end that has the funny part. It says this position will be a startup of the startup. Will be part of the startup group. We need a leader and a veteran in the space that can bring in business and funding for Noct. Here are your responsibilities. You need to secure funding, budget management, record keeping, strategic advisor to the CEO and COO. Here are the fucking qualifications for this remote volunteer junior level CFO position at Noct Gaming Lifestyles, who believes that they want to break the stigma that gamers are lazy. The qualifications are an MBA. You have to have a master's of business administration or relevant experience in the esports industry in order to do this fucking volunteer CFO job at Noct Gaming Lifestyle. An MBA. And this is not like unique. Noct Gaming Lifestyle is not unique in what they are asking for here. What they are asking for is somebody insanely qualified to come and work for their organization to secure funding, manage budgets, keep clean records, and serve as a strategic advisor to the CEO and COO for absolutely fucking free. A volunteer position. And they end their listing with this. First of all, this listing is no more than 150 words. Understand that this position is volunteer until Noct secures funding, which, by the way, will be your job. All right? We are building from the ground up and need a team of like-minded individuals. I wish you could comment on these listings. I love Hitmarker, by the way. If you are looking into, if you want a career in esports and are looking for jobs, they post tons of paid positions. But they also post, I wish I could sit down with them and be like, look, can you stop posting shit like this? Like, tell people that you are not going to serve as a megaphone for their volunteer for us shit, especially this stuff. Hey, you need to have an MBA for us to consider you for this job you are not going to get paid for, so that we can break the stigma that gamers are lazy. Well, let's break the stigma that gamers treat their employees like shit. Let's break that stigma. Let's start there. And it's this whole like, and it's the problem with the Chucklefish story. It's this whole idea of like, hey, if you work for us, you're either A, going to be able to be part of something great, which, let's be honest, the people who worked at Chucklefish on Starbound were a part of something great. Sold 1 million copies. But they didn't see one iota of compensation from said success that they were a part of making. So it's either you'll be able to share in the success of something special, or we're going to give you the valuable experience that you need in order to move on to the next venture in life. I'll tell you what, man. I have written for a lot of outlets, and I have applied for jobs at other paying outlets, and they do not give a rip about the experience of me working for, you know, I can't even remember the names of some of the places that I wrote. You know, like, and I wrote for Twinfinite, which was a great experience. I got paid for, you know, my time at Twinfinite based on the views that I could generate. But, you know, most of the time, experiences that you gain and don't get paid for is very rarely experience that people are going to value when you go and try to apply for other positions. And so this whole idea of like, oh, it's a great way to get your foot in the door is just bunk. And I say that totally self-aware, and I've told this story multiple times on the Nightly Rundown and on PvA Radio, and I'm very transparent about this. A few years ago, I ran an outlet called Two Left Sticks, and, you know, grew too fast. It grew too fast, too big, too fast. Tried to pull in extra support. Asked for volunteer writers who would get paid on views, with the hopes that, oh, we are going to be able to pull enough views in to pay. But in all honesty, the people that wrote for us didn't generate enough views to get paid anything. And I feel terrible for that. Terrible for that. And I wish I could go back and redo all of that, but I've promised myself two things. Number one, I will never ask somebody to give any of their time, energy, or effort in building something that they will not be getting compensated for. To build something for me that they're not getting compensated for. Like that was and the second thing I promised myself is I'm not going to work for anybody else to build something for them for absolutely free. I'm very sensitive to these kinds of things now because I realize how shitty it was of me to ask people to do that. And I realize how shitty it is for people to ask that of me. Guys, look at this. A chief financial officer position that they want to have an MBA to work volunteer until they can secure funds, which is a part of your job description. That's Kafiti says, at least you had the intention of paying that. And mine was naivete on my part of thinking like, okay, if we bring these people in, like here's the views that I'm pulling on my stuff. If we pull other people in and have that same quality and they share it as much as I do, we'll generate those views for them as well and be able to pay them. And it was just, I was dumb. Like I was dumb and misguided and incorrect about my expectations of what we were able to achieve. I luckily met Cody through that avenue. And Cody has become a close friend of mine and an awesome partner in the podcast that we put on and those sorts of things. So there's been good that's come from it, but I learned a lot about myself, about the industry, about things that you should expect. But we live in this culture. Like we talked about this a few weeks ago on PvA radio, and it was when we had Andrew Nimsgren from Popped Off on, and we had a lively discussion about this. And he was like, he basically told me, like, Luke, he's I think 22 years old, so he's like 7 years younger than me. He said, Luke, people my age like do not expect to get a paying job right out of college. They expect to. Yo, Bill, for real, what's up? He says, very good talk in the chat. Yeah, we had a really good discussion. He did call me old in the middle of that conversation, but that's beside the point. But he essentially said, like, look, we don't expect to get paid. Like, we expect to have to work for free and grind, and because if we're not going to do it, there's going to be somebody behind us who's going to come and do it, and they're going to get that experience. And I just fucking hate that, man. I just think that's so shitty. Not of Andrew to believe, but that is the culture in the world that he lives in, that he feels like he has to partake in. Popped Off says, wait. This is Andrew in the chat here. Oh, he says, I heard my name just as I arrived. We're talking about this Chucklefish story where some former developers for Starbound said that they worked hundreds of hours on the game when they were like teenagers and never got paid for them because they were just promised like this experience will let you get a foot in the door in the games industry. So I was talking about our conversation where you basically told me like, Luke, guys my age don't expect to get paid for their first like job in the industry that they want to be in. And their whole idea is like, if I don't do it, somebody else will, and they'll get the experience and the foot in the door in order to go and do it. And we've also, in case both of you have just joined us, we've also been laughing our asses off, at least I have, about this posting on Hitmarker jobs for a CFO for Knocked Gaming Lifestyles that requires you to have an MBA to secure funding because the position is volunteer until Knocked secures the funding that you will be responsible for securing as the CFO. That is, again, volunteer with your MBA. This is the world we live in, guys. This is the world we live in, where you were being asked to do pop toss is just applied. This is the world we live in, guys. It's the world we live in. Like, it is this idea that, like, oh man, as long as I start something up and I can slap esports on it, I can ask people to contribute to it for fucking free because, oh man, look, think how good it's going to look that you can put CFO of Knocked Gaming Lifestyles on your resume. And it may be how the world works. I keep saying that's not how the world works. Maybe it is how the world works. That's the reason these things continue to pop up, and it's the reason people continue to apply. But it needs to not be how the world works. Yeah, Beal for real says need a cultural shift for sure on these kinds of things. We do. My time is fucking valuable. You know why I know my time is valuable? Because of how mad I get when people waste it. That's how I know my time is valuable. Because I get fucking pissed when it gets wasted. On anything. Like if I have a 3 o'clock appointment and I'm waiting around for the person to show up till 3:15 and they finally show up, I am pissed throughout the rest of that appointment. I have to keep a pretty robust calendar of client calls and meetings that I have to be in. And like, I try to get people to understand, like, look, if you're 15 minutes late to a phone call that I've got, that's going to push my entire calendar 15 minutes because I got stuff lined up back to back to back. Because I recognize my time is valuable and I get upset when that time gets wasted. And I think that Starbound should do, that Chucklefish should do what they can to make things right with these contributors who developed, who did a lot of heavy lifting for Starbound. And really like that led to their success, led to a lot of great success. And we just need to get past this mindset in this industry that, oh man, experience is the most valuable thing that you can have. Time is the most valuable thing that I can have. Rent money is the most valuable thing that I can have. Money for food is the most valuable thing that I can have. And yes, it may feel really great that I am contributing and I am a like-minded individual that's attempting to build this special thing alongside you here at Knocked Gaming Lifestyles. Which, yeah, an arrow must be pulled back to fly forward. And another thing I want to point out, and my chair is sinking here as I get weighed down with anger. Another thing that I want to point out in this post from Knocked Gaming Lifestyles that I think is representative of the mindset that people have of why it's okay to ask people to work for free. Is this sentence right here. We want to break the stigma that gamers are lazy. And it's this idea of like, you always got to be grinding, man. It's all about the grind. You got to grind. You got to grind to get to the top, to get the job that you want, to get in the industry that you want, to work for the company that you want. You got to grind. And if you're not grinding, you're just fucking lazy. And it's not about that at all. Like, me not being willing to work for free is not because I'm not lazy. It's not because I'm lazy. It's because I think my time is valuable. I think if I'm going to give you my time to produce something for you, I should be compensated for that time that I'm giving to produce something for you. So yeah, anyway. I feel like I'm talking in circles. Go read this article. It's just going to make you mad. But I think it's valuable to see the talking points that these people were hitting when they were trying to get these people to, you know, give their time over by saying like, you're going to get your foot in the door. Because if you, and this isn't just in the gaming industry, it's not just in the esports world. If you have a job, if you were wanting a job in any kind of competitive industry, if it's finance, if it's marketing, I don't care what it is, you're going to have people telling you like, oh man, you're going to need to work for free. You know, do it for free while you demonstrate your value. And it's just, it's bunk, man. It's bunk. If you're going to do something for free, do it for yourself. If you want to get into esports stuff, like, figure out a path to build something for yourself for free and demonstrate your value in that. If you want to get into game development, like do something for yourself. Start building something for yourself for free until somebody can see your value and wants to pay you for it. If you want to get into marketing or finance, like do something for yourself for free to build the experience. Like don't do it for somebody else. All right, let's move on.